Hey y'all, my name is Sterling and my pronouns are they and them if you can swing it. So glad to be here with you. As I look at this whirling world, I experience a great deal of fear, and I know I'm not the only one. Maybe 10 years ago, 15, with the advent of the internet and social media, things just started spinning more quickly. And certainly in the last several years with COVID, it seems like there's no place that we can really set our feet. This level of change and disruption is scary. And no matter who I talk to, people have reasons to fear. Some are parents, some are parents of girl children. Some are elders who are worried about our Social Security and our Medicaid. Some are activists. Some are immigrants. The list goes on and on. As you might imagine, my trans identity makes me feel vulnerable in ways that I've never experienced before. As someone assigned female at birth, as a queer, I certainly was raised with the knowledge that violence could be visited on me at any time, but I got used to it. Or I thought that history was always moving inexorably forward. There have been 895 anti-trans bills proposed in state legislatures throughout this country this year. One from my home state of Texas centers on the idea of identity fraud and would charge transgender people who identify as trans on legal documents and potentially lead to jail time. So my birth certificate is in the state of Texas. I can't change my birth certificate, and my driver's license says I'm a male. New York allows for me to put an X, which might more clearly reflect my non-binary identity, but it also might be red meat for customs or law enforcement that pull me over, so I didn't want any part of that. So just my very essence. Employment and housing discriminations, protections are disappearing. Trans people with a very early executive order in this administration are barred from serving in the military. And perhaps what's scariest about that is that the reasoning is that adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with one's birth conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle. So I am morally incapable of serving this country. Since November 6th, I've lived with this fear that I could be jailed, subject to violence, ejected from my country, even. When Shannon and I recently returned from Japan, we had a lawyer on call as we went through customs. And as we stood in line, we deleted all the social media apps that might clue anyone in that, no, we weren't any trouble. Fear runs alongside me, and the usual ways of comforting myself no longer seem adequate. I usually go, go, go. No fear can catch you when you're moving quickly. I shove food in my mouth constantly, most especially sugar, and even the salted maple pie from Little Rye Bakery right up the street no longer calms my beating heart, but I do recommend it heartily. But I want to say that this urgency is making way for new insights. That's the good news. The seed that is blooming inside me that has by no means come to fruition is that I've got to move from me to we. I honestly, my entire life, have believed I am the only one who can save me. I've got this burgeoning idea that I can only find salvation with you. with us, with we. Just a quick question for people to self-identify. You can raise your hand in spirit, or if you want, in a literal sense, in terms of which camp you identify with, toward community or toward separation. So which of you, when you're in fear and under a lot of stress, fall into the loving arms of your community? God bless. How many of you draw inward and clam up? Okay. Maybe it's not black and white, maybe it's situational. I know some of you are experts in the realm of we, and for those of you who are, I'm glad you're here because you make the world warmer every day. But for those of you who aren't or who think you could be a little better, why don't we just huddle up and talk for a minute? I want to give you a few of my qualifications for my me-centered nature and see if it rings any bells. One of the ways I know which camp I'm in is about 10 years into my marriage with Shannon, I turned to her and I said, I think you love me. And she looked at me and she said, I'm going to kill you. She had been caring for me and loving me for 10 years. Some of us are a little slow on the uptake, right? My brain is a bad neighborhood, and it can be a door to depression and self-criticism and shutting down and losing hope and believing I am not worthy of we. At 63, I still know these well-worn paths. But as I said, this fear is giving me new urgency, and I want to share what I think that means. Obviously, it's community, community, community. That's like the brand word of Unitarian, Universalist Unitarian Catskills. It's the word of the year, at least in progressive circles. At one level, it's a series of active steps we have to take. You can read about them in any wellness magazine, which is, pick up the phone, connect with people regularly, don't sit on your couch and watch TV, go to a movie. If you're going to read, why don't you go to a coffee shop and just take part in some mammalian warmth, right? I'm lucky that I'm married to someone who forces me to connect. When I'm at a gathering that she forces me to go to, I stick my hand out, especially to people who look as uncomfortable as I feel. And what I love is that she doesn't say, I told you so when we get home, and I feel a lot better. But there are a million ways I keep separate from you, whether it's thinking about that path that Joyce read about, going up the mountain. Y'all are walking along, you're talking. I'm 10 steps ahead or 10 steps behind. Physically, I'm not in proximity to you. When we're talking in my head, my mother, who is an English teacher like myself, is judging your grammar. That's one way I'm keeping separate from you. But I don't have to die this way. And I can and am evolving in no small part because of the moral peril of this moment. So I want to share 3 examples in my life of where I'm hitting that edge that Pema talks about and pressing through it. So the first one is you. I have no interest in joining a church. I don't want to get gussied up every Sunday morning. I see the people who work here at UU who seem to wear like 40 hats each, literally, some of you. And it just makes me deeply anxious that if I start coming here, y'all are going to want me to do some work. Right? I don't want to go to the budget meeting today. I don't want to, right? I also, and I don't mean to be hurtful, but we are not a young crew here. I'm 62, some of you are a little more than that. Or a lot. I know we all eventually die. But I bet we're going to have a lot more funerals, Universalist Unitarian, than at the Unicorn Bar where the young queers are gathering down the street. I'm afraid that I will fall in love with you and you will die. So that's another way that I can stay separate from you. But there is a sweet spirit in this place. As most of you know, I did this Trans 101 training and did a 15-second video on Instagram. I looked yesterday, 262,000 people have viewed that video about this connection we had, talking about drawing that circle wider, always drawing that circle wider. So despite my objections, I admit it, I've got a little crush on you. And I'm showing up and I'm doing the footwork and I'm trying to make it feel more like a treat. Me and Joyce met at the diner last Saturday night to have breakfast, and pancakes go a long way to help me join the crew, right? Going from me to we to y'all, right? The second example is my dear friend Jane. She owned the general store in rural Southwest Texas where I grew up, or where I moved to in the 7th grade. When I moved there, I was all bad perms and pimples. But she was sweet to me. And then she became my mother's best friend. And together they co-founded a senior center. And her husband owned a lot of the property in this downtown, small town where I lived. So she was the first entrepreneur I ever met, and I deeply admired her. And when I came out, she regularly confronted my mother about her homophobia until my mother had to tell her to shut her dang mouth. So I have made a point of visiting Jane every year in my small hometown. And she's 95. She still calls me Susie, but that's okay because she's 95. We avoid politics, but it's clear that we're on two sides of the fence. So November happened. And I know that she wasn't thinking about me. And so I didn't call. And so days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. But I used you folks and this talk as my deadline. And Thursday I called Jane and we chatted and the door was opened. And more importantly, it isn't closed. And that begins to change things, right? The last example is my therapist. We got into a screaming fight. He's super smart and super intense, and I'm a little intense. And our work has been really transformative, but when we clashed hard. Turns out he had problems with some things I was doing, and I had some problems with some things he was doing, and we didn't talk about it. So we had this huge fight, and I never wanted to talk to him again. And my wife, who happens to be a therapist, said, you cannot just end this relationship. At least deserves a conversation. You know what they call it, right? You know what it's called, right? Closure. Thank you. Gotta have closure. So we set the call, and, he took rigorous accountability for his part, and I was rigorously accountable for my part, and we were talking. And I said, "Can I ask you a crazy question?" Which, if you're talking to your therapist, is kind of the best person to ask that. I said, "Should we try this again?" And he said, "I would love that." He said, "In my family, we had the fights, but we didn't make up." And so Shannon had already said this shrinky phrase to me, and he brought it up again, but it's a really important one, and it is rupture and repair. And rupture and repair isn't just, oh, make sure you make up if you break up. What rupture and repair is foundationally changing our sense of safety in the world, because we can mess up and we can be hurt, and we can realize we don't have to lose those we love. As I hope you can see from these three examples, stepping toward we is requiring new levels of grounding in me. So that means that I'm seeing spirituality as less optional, more required. I'm meditating. It's only 5 minutes every day, but I'm doing it. It's 31 days, I'm proud to report. I'm reading inspirational books. I'm doing yoga. I'm penning my dreams. I'm showing up here. We've all got a set of tools, right? As Joyce mentioned, I'm a woodworker, and I don't cut the knots out of wood. I center them in my work. And I'm embracing those wounds in the workshop as a meditation on what I want to do with my life. And I will tell you that no chisel is left unsharpened in my drive toward this evolution. So what about you? What could your fear drive you toward that would be transformative? Could it fuel you to new levels of transformation and connection? What are the behaviors you use to keep yourself apart? What lies behind them? Can you ask yourself those questions almost as if your life depended on it? If we picture the rest of our lives as a large party room, who is in there now? Who can we invite in? Who can be with us in our fullest we?